Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to see already a lot of you joining this Fleet Forum Wednesday webinar. It's not 12 yet, so I'm going to give it a minute more to allow more colleagues to join us. In the meantime, if you want to use the AI-generated subtitles, you can follow the instructions on the screen. Um, and we hope that that is helpful for you. So it is 12 o'clock. And again, welcome to all of you who are joining this webinar today, where we are going to address an interesting topic, managing fatigue in drivers. And we're basically going to talk about what policies and practices you can put in place. So for those of you who are here for the first time, but also for those of you who have been participating in this webinar many times, please feel free to use the chat. Introduce yourself. Which organization are you from? Where are you dialing in from? We are also always keen to know that. But also, what made you join this webinar today? So why are you here? What caught your interest on this topic? We would really like to know. My name is Roos van Stijn. I'm the development director with Fleet Forum, and I'm really happy to be with you today. The webinar is gonna last for around 30 minutes in total. I will try to keep my sort of my thoughts, my topics to around 20 minutes. So that leaves us also time for some questions and answers, which you can put in the chat or in the Q&A. I will pick them up at the end of the webinar, so don't worry about it. Hopefully, by the end of this webinar, the things that we have addressed are that we understand the magnitude of fatigue-related risk in road operations, but also that we have explored some evidence-based policy and workplace practices to reduce the risk of fatigue driving. And then also lastly, to consider how to apply those in your own fleet operations and working in the aid and development sector. So throughout the webinar, if you have thoughts about how some of the ideas that I came up with or that I collected looking in some research, if that sort of sounds to you like, oh, I can implement this myself, write it down, because what we would like to do at the end of this webinar is that you go back to your own operations and start implementing maybe some of the ideas that we have shared. So I hope there's something that is good for you. Now, why are we doing this webinar, and why are we doing this right now? You might know that on the third Sunday in November, it is World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, and that's something that is being celebrated every year. And the reason why the World Day of Remembrance exists is, of course, that every crash has consequences for individuals, families, and communities. So with every road crash, lives gets lost, talent gets lost, and we need to do everything that we can to avoid crashes. And fatigue is one of the major causes of crashes. So, like I said, driver fatigue is a major workplace safety risk. If you look at some research that I've done for this webinar, is I found out that as many of 1 in 5 fatal crashes involve driver fatigue. So that's huge. And key causes are really in the workplace or fleet context. It has to do with long shifts, consecutive driving hours, night driving, multiple stops, disrupted sleep patterns, high monotony, so especially on remote roads. And why this then matters in the operations that we all work in is that, well, your vehicles may travel in demanding terrain, under unpredictable schedules, driver rest or even driver breaks may be compromised. And if you look at it, the community and the cost, the organizational cost to the organization, or the cost to the organization, is really high, right? There's a human cost to it, there's a reputational cost to it, and there's an operational cost to it. So I think for these reasons, it is a problem that we need to address. It is a problem that we need to look into as a community and as fleet managers, as we are all here. Now, the impact that driver fatigue has on operations, and well, maybe some of you who might be also behind the wheel for long hours might recognize this, is that the impact that it has is that driver fatigue gives you slower reaction times, right? It can lead to lane drift, so where your vehicle sort of moving from one lane to the other, but also micro sleep events, which can last for several seconds. And at highways, if you drive at a highway speed, then it really equates to a significant distance that you are traveling without any attention. So maybe you recognize that you sometimes doze off, and it can only be for a couple of seconds. But when you are traveling, let's say at 100 kilometers or 90 kilometers an hour, then it really means that you are traveling, sort of unknowing where you're going. So the other impact that it has is that there is an increased risk during high risk times. And these are identified as whenever you drive early morning. Let's say between 6 and 8, but also after long hours. For example, returning from field visits, or for those of you who are allowing night shifts, maybe to pick up passengers from the airport late at night. Those are elevated risk times. And of course, this all has a cost implication. If your vehicle, your driver is involved in a crash, and this is not only related to crashes that are caused by fatigue, but it has an implication. It's crash damage, it's downtime, it is driver injury or illness, passenger injury, illness, insurance. You have litigation issues, reputational damage. So all these things have a cost implication to it. And then we also need to add the complexity of the operating environment where you mostly work in, whether when it's off-road or where you provide remote support. And there's, of course, also a potential for exposure to security risk after a crash. And last but not least, also the impact on mission continuity. So if your organization is involved in a crash, then it could well lead that the community is no longer accepting your organization, or even if a peer organization is involved in crashes, then also it could lead to your organization having less access to the community that you need to work in, or that you want to work in. So that is the impact that it can have on organizations and on operations. Now, looking at policy management or driver fatigue and how we can manage that from a policy and practice framework is we always want to look at it from 3 angles. So first we have the policy foundations. Then we have work and operational practices. So we write something in our policy, and then, well, based on what we say in our policy, we're gonna work and we're gonna practice. We're gonna put it in practice, and that is, of course, influenced by culture, by leadership, and by how good we are at monitoring. And in the next couple of slides, I will explain a bit more about these three elements. Now, as you can see, and that's why there's arrows between the three blocks, as you can see, they are all influencing each other. So the policy will influence the way we work and what we practice. But the policy is also influenced by our culture, and it is the safety culture that is influencing our policy, as well as our leadership. So, but also how well are we monitoring? Because by monitoring, we can see, okay, is this policy serving the purpose? So all of these elements are influencing each other, and they strengthen each other, or they can weaken each other as well. For example, if you have a very a low safety culture in your organization, then your policy will also be not as strong on this topic than if you have very strong leadership. Now, if we start with the driver policy, so the policy, a driver fatigue policy, is not a nice to have. Building on the fact that for a lot of the work that our organizations are doing, and the long hours that people are behind the wheel, we would say from Fleet Forum is that every organization should have a driver fatigue policy, either embedded in their fleet management policy or in their occupational health and safety policy. Now, what are some of the ingredients for a good policy? You should want to include, or you want to include fatigue risk management. So that is identifying the tasks and the schedules and the driver journeys that have a high fatigue risk. So does your organization engage in a lot of night driving, or a lot of long consecutive hours of driving, or very early starts? If that is the case, then definitely you should put something on that in your policy. Then you should have very clear guidelines on work hours, rest hours, and driving hours, but also managing after hours or standby driving. For example, setting maximum consecutive driving hours, required rest breaks, or recovery periods. So one of the things that we always recommend is that that organizations should limit continuous driving to a maximum of 2 hours before a break, and especially doing that in the times where you have the elevated risk. So in the early morning, during sort of after lunchtime, but also in the night. Fleet Forum suggests to do it always, but specifically also during those hours. Then in your policy, you want to write something about driver training and awareness programs. So helping your drivers to recognize the signs of fatigue, so that they understand, like, okay, now I feel that I'm getting tired, I am fatigued, but that they also understand the policies, and that they feel empowered to report fatigue, and that they can request rest. And then monitoring and reporting. So in your policy also, it would be good to include systems for drivers and supervisors and passengers to report fatigue, but also near misses. And for organizations to monitor schedules, to monitor also the compliance to the driving hours and the rest hours and the work hours. And to, of course, monitor the crashes that happen from driving, from fatigue driving. Then the last one that definitely should be part of the policy is that incident or crash investigation and incident investigation. So the fatigue-related incidents or crashes and near misses should be analyzed, and the root causes should be identified. So that you can adapt the policies as you are learning why people are driving fatigued. So that was part one. So that was the policies. Now, once you have the policy, then you want to actively put your policy at work for you. So writing in your policy that you have maximum driving hours, maximum or minimum rest hours between shifts is one thing. But now you need to build those work and rest schedules that support the alertness of the driver. So, for instance, you have to create your schedules to avoid extended periods of driving without adequate rest, or avoid early morning starts after late work, rotating driver tasks, so drivers are not always driving during the night or during long hours. Of course, if you have telematics, you should definitely use that to plan your routes. And that also includes that you have to reduce, or you can reduce monotony. So not always put the same driver at the same long trips, but really rotate that, because that also keeps people alert. Another good practice, or another practice that you want to do from your policy, is to encourage sleep health and driver wellness. So training your drivers, engaging or creating awareness with your drivers about getting set between 7 to 9 hours sleep at night, that they have a good sleep hygiene, recognizing health problems, for example, mental stress or sleep apnea, diabetes, that all contribute to fatigue, but also stress the importance of taking healthy diets. And you might say, Rose, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical person, so why should I do all that? Because, and that comes back to what I was saying earlier, is if you create that awareness amongst your drivers, then by you advocating for sleep health and driver wellness, that also then makes it easier for drivers to step up and say, hey, I'm not feeling so good, I'm tired, I cannot drive anymore. Now, maybe you do not want to do this by yourself. Maybe you have medical officers or occupational health and safety officers in your organization. So it would be good to involve them. Now, the next one that you want to actively put at work is a stop shift culture. So, and what that means is that at any moment, your drivers or maybe your passengers can stop the drive. So for your drivers, when they feel overly tired, or for your passengers, when they notice that the driver is tired, that they can stop the work, that they can say, we're not driving any meter, and that this is supported by the organization and not penalized. So your driver, if he does that, he should not be penalized. He should actually be applauded, because you want to create a culture where reporting fatigue is a safe thing to do. Then other things that you could do is looking into schedules, working schedules that really support, let's say, our body clock. So when you recognize that driving, when you recognize the moments where the body's alertness is naturally lower, so for example, early in the morning or after many hours of being awake, is at a higher risk. And then in the way how you then execute the schedule, you should avoid as much as you can, of course, to drive. So in the early morning, let's say before sunrise, you don't want to have your drivers on the road. And then the last one is know also what is going on in the life of your drivers. For many drivers, they make long hours. Maybe even if they drop the vehicle at the organization, they still have to travel quite far, and all of that also adds to the fatigue, right? We also know that sometimes drivers take on a night job, also driving maybe in their private vehicles, serving as taxi drivers. If that is going on, then you can bet on it that at some point your drivers will be fatigued. So by talking to your drivers, by having one-on-ones, knowing what is going on with your drivers, you have the ability to recognize when they are more likely to be fatigued. And then the last one of our three part practice, policy, and culture. The last block is that leadership buy-in is essential. So management must prioritize fatigue risk as a safety hazard, and not as an individual driver responsibility. It is not the driver's fault that or it's not the driver's responsibility either that your organization has to do long travels, right? So that is the choice that the organization makes. We want to respond to this, to a certain activity. And by doing that, they basically place a risk on the people working for the organization. So the organization should really look into, okay, how can we avoid those risks and how can we minimize those risks? Then the other one, leading or related to culture and to leadership, is to the organization should create a culture around fatigue reporting. And what I mean with that is that the drivers are not penalized for requesting rest or reporting fatigue, because you need to build trust and compliance with your drivers and with your passengers. So as mentioned before, if the drivers are stopping work because they feel fatigued, if the drivers are coming to you and say, hey, I cannot drive anymore, I need rest, they should be supported in that. And basically the organization should then look internally to see, okay, we need to reorganize ourselves to continue to make it possible to have the work done, but also not putting our people at a higher risk. And then the famous words that we always use in Fleet Forum is that continuously review and improve. So use the data and the feedback from the drivers to refine your schedules, your policy, your training, but also leverage your crash data and near miss data to adjust your practices. That is also an important one. And another one is to integrate, let's say, fleet safety and fatigue management into a wider safety program. So it's not a standalone, it's not an add-on, but it is really integrated maybe in your occupational health and safety management system. Now, some top tips for you as fleet managers. I would say it would be really good to sit down, maybe with your drivers, and map the high fatigue risk journeys in your fleet. So where do you have the long day drives to remote areas, the night movements? How many of your drivers have to be on standby duty after operational tasks? How far do they still need to drive after they got from work? So the moment that you map that, then you also can see, okay, where do I have the risks and what do I need to put in place? Then another top tip is to build rest periods into mission planning. So whenever you plan missions, ensure that there is driver rest time in between, that there is driver relief, that there is a contingency for delays, because you never know what is happening on the road, right? And if we really plan it to the last minute, then you can be very sure that drivers will be fatigued. Then, well, use mixed driving tasks to avoid monotony. So alternate longer drives with shorter tasks, avoid always allocating the same driver to the longest haul. And also, whenever you have VTS systems in your vehicles, use it, but really keep it context adapted. So where remote operations lack infrastructure, so where you don't have any way to communicate with drivers, a simple check-in protocols where they call you or where you stress that the driver can self-report that he is fatigued, and that he can stop it, that he can stop the drive. That can also really help. Then for those of you who are using rental vehicles and with that rental drivers as well, the tip is also to include them in your driver fatigue policy. So that it's not only for your own drivers, but also that the drivers that you contract, that they can also be part of that policy and of the practices that you adopt. And of course, monitor, and then review and adapt. So after the operations, discuss routinely with the drivers on fatigue issues, but also crashes and near misses, and adjust your policy and your schedules accordingly. Now, I've been talking a lot about driver fatigue, right? And I recognize I didn't go into what is driver fatigue. So we will share this specific sheet after the webinar with you, together with the link to the recording, where it is recognizing driver fatigue, and it sort of looks at the physical signs of it, the mental signs, and the behavioral signs. So I'm not expecting you to sort of, know them by heart, but you can sort of use this also in your conversations with drivers or in your meetings to sort of start to raise awareness for driver fatigue. And that also may lead to drivers getting to you and reporting that they are fatigued. So that is one sort of little present from Fleet Forum. So I promised only 20 minutes. I went a little bit over, but we do have some time for questions. And I see that we have a question in the Q&A. Please comment the rapid rise on So Sam is asking, great question. Please comment about the rapid rise on reliance on energy drinks to fight fatigue. Yeah, so I think the energy drinks is in the same category as if you feel tired, then take a cup of coffee. I'm not the expert on sort of, I'm not a doctor, I'm not but from the research that I did is that if you feel tired and you take a cup of coffee, the effects on it is minimum. So if you take the cup of coffee, the caffeine or the energy drink, the caffeine kicks in, and the effect is really limited. If you feel tired, if you are fatigued, the best medicine, so to say, or the best solution is to stop driving and get rest. So it's definitely not something to rely on. It's not something to promote, like, oh, take a cup of coffee. No, the best thing is to stop driving and make sure that people stay safe. Carlos is asking, a common practice is to adopt policies on driving hours and resting times designed for operating commercial vehicles. Do you have examples of related how to manage within ambulance operation? Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because so I think the practices of operating, if you are in an organization that is operating ambulances, and if these ambulances are on standby 24/7, then the example that I have, but it is not an example from the aid and development sector, is that then basically you need to adjust or increase your driver pool. So if your vehicle is driving, it needs to be on standby 24/7. then you need more drivers to sort of be able to run the 24 hours pool. But that also means that you will have drivers on the road during those risk hours, right? In the middle of the night, early morning, late night. And then definitely the organization needs to put much more in place to make sure that the drivers are rested. So much more on the engagement with drivers, monitoring their fatigue, maybe also have some technology that helps the drivers or that detects when they are fatigued. So yeah, there needs to be much more investment than from the organization, either in technology or in engagement awareness training, and a much more stricter monitoring of, okay, do we have near misses from it? Do we have crashes from it? And what is it that we need to do? Let me see if there... don't you think that we need to avail a safe place for drivers to rest in the office area? I think that it will also help to monitor their health and alertness. Thanks, Bolde. I'm not sure what you mean with a safe place, but I do know that many organizations do have a driver room. Now, if you, and I also do know organizations that have long hours, or where the drivers make long hours, long trips, and where the organization have invested in sort of a guest room for the drivers where they can sleep, where they can relax, when they can get their rest. I also do know of organizations that serve healthy meals to their drivers. So just these are all ideas that you could do. But yeah, so providing a space for a driver after a long trip where they can relax, where they can get good night, good rest, good healthy food, maybe exercise a little bit. All that will sort of help to battle fatigue problems. Fatigue reports are often wrongly assumed to be the signs of laziness or sleeping on the job. Okay, are there ways to distinguish between genuine fatigue and laziness? Ooh, that's an interesting one, Vincent. And that's the last one because we're already out of time. Or even provide a sauna for the drivers. Yeah, yes, Carl. That would also be nice. But going back to the how to distinguish between fatigue and laziness. I think, to me, I feel a bit uncomfortable with sort of the term laziness. I think that fatigue, driver fatigue, is a serious issue, and I think that as an organization, you have to look at, okay, what are we doing to contribute to that situation, right? So if your organization is putting drivers for long hours on the road, if you are allowing them to have night jobs, if you know that they have night jobs and you don't do anything about it, if you know that drivers are not, if they are stressed, whatever the reason is, if you know that drivers are not taking healthy food, if they're not living a healthy lifestyle, then of course, then you also need, as an organization, you need to do something. Now, looking at if drivers are not performing, I think then you should put your KPIs to the test, right? If your driver has KPIs and your driver is not meeting those KPIs, then you need to review with the driver what are the reasons for that, and how can the driver improve, and you need to follow up and monitor that. So that would be my suggestion. I think sort of the final word is driver fatigue is more than just, oh, I'm sleepy, I'm tired. driver fatigue can well have major health complications and implications. So it is better that we, as fleet managers, as organizations with a responsibility, that we are managing it. So I really hope that this webinar gave you some food for thought. I liked the question. I liked how active you've been. We will be back with more. Webinars. So in 2 weeks from now, we have a webinar from our Fleet Forum member Pedders, suspensions and brakes. We don't know the title yet, but we will soon publish it. And then on the 26th of November, Desalin, who works for World Vision, World Health Organizations, apologies, um, and who won the Best Transport Achievement Award 2025, will share how WHO has been designing fleet dashboard that drives performance. So I really encourage you to be there. And for now, we will share the recording. We will share that slide on the signs of driving fatigue. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to talk to you and see you soon. Bye bye.